So behave yourself, Warren. What I'd like to do is, first of all, welcome all of you to being here tonight. Just some kind of rules, regulations here, and then we'll get going. We kind of have a script that will get us through most of the evening tonight, and then as we get towards the end, there'll be obviously a time for questions and answers. So write down any questions you may have as we get going with things. Also, if you're not familiar, go with the chat function. Get up the chat box. Jesse has already put a chat in there, just saying hi and the names of some of the songs that he's going to be playing tonight. He'll explain them as well for us. If at any time you have a question, the easiest way to make sure I get it will be in the chat function. Once we kind of get to a question and answer period, if you just want to raise your hand. But like Glenn was saying before, we have two screens and I can only see half of you at a time. So if you're raising your hand, I may not see you raise your hand. There is also, I believe, a function. Now, Jesse, I forget where it is. Where is it, Jesse, again? In the more section, isn't it? To raise the hand?
Go into participants.
Oh, yes.
And you should be able to.
All right, so if you, in participants, you can click on raise hand and a little hand will show me like Jesse just raised his hand right now. And then I can see that your hand is raised, you have a question. So either you can write the question in the chat feature or put that little hand up and make it happen that way. And if both of those fail, just raise your hand up like this and wave it at an appropriate time and we'll get to your question later on. Stay on mute, obviously, because that will eliminate the feedback, especially as Jesse gets playing as he starts performing for us. So please, please, please stay on that. In the upper right, you can, if you want to stay on a larger picture of Jesse, especially when he performs, if you take your view off of speaker or off of gallery view and change it to speaker view, then when he's playing or talking, you'll see him larger on your screen and you'll be able to have a better view of him performing. Obviously, you won't see as many people, but the goal is to see him perform tonight. Okay. Obviously, we have some special guests here with us tonight. Not only do we have Jesse, but we have a couple retired Fond du Lac music teachers that we invited who are part of our webinar tonight, I guess is what we'll call it. Warren Larson, who now lives in Colorado, correct, Warren? I think that's where you're at. Wave your hand, Warren, so we all know who you are. Warren taught with me at the high school for 2 years, and he was my junior high director at Sabish for many years and taught there and was elementary and jack of all trades in Fond du Lac. And Carol, his wife Carolyn, taught piano in the district. And Warren had Jesse as a student when I was at the high school with them too. So they know the Pipers really well. And I thought a lot of you would love to see Warren. Warren sang with oratorio many years as well. So super excited, Warren. Welcome to be with us. And I think we also have Chris McLean. Chris, wave your hand. There you are, Chris. Chris McLean taught for many, many years at Lakeshore Elementary School and was Jesse's, correct, right? Jesse's music teacher at Lakeshore and very close friend of the Piper family. So welcome. Welcome to you. And I believe we also have, is that Jesse's grandparents? Jesse? Yes. So welcome. We're so glad you're with us tonight. Is that right, Jesse?
It is, yes.
Awesome.
Hi, Grandpa. And my parents are here too.
Oh, where are your parents? I missed them. I'm sorry. Oh, there they are. Hi, David and Lori. Welcome. Awesome. So glad to have everybody with us tonight. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And so now let's take a moment to, we have to give a nice warm welcome with your hands to Jesse. Jesse, former student who's joining us. So Jesse, thank you so much. We have a little bit of a script here, but we're going to also just kind of go with the flow tonight. And we thought we'd do a little bit of performing and a little bit of talking and just letting Jesse talk a little bit about his life that he has taken since graduating in 2005 from Fond du Lac High School. I need to tell you my first story of knowing Jesse. My first time I met Jesse was when he was a sixth grader at Lakeshore Elementary School, and we went over to Lakeshore to visit with the Sabish choirs to recruit singers for choir. And Chris McLean's like, you got to meet this little boy. You got to meet this little boy. And here's Jesse. And then he comes to Sabish and he's in choir with me. And he's like, well, can I play the piano, Mr. Schneider? I'm like, well, sure. You never know what you're going to get when a kid asks you to do that, right? You're thinking Heart and Soul or something really Fur-Elise. And he just starts going bonkers on the piano. And I'm like, holy cow, this guy can really play. And that was the beginning of a long, obviously, student-teacher friendship, and having him as a student in my classes. But then, since then, colleague and performing with him and doing things like this with him. So Jesse, it is so awesome to have you with us. I guess we're going to turn it over to you and just let you talk a little bit at kind of the journey you've taken since 2005 to kind of where you're at today, in New York, living a life as a performance, playing the piano, accompanying, directing operas, on and on and on. Your list is huge. So welcome, Jesse. Take it over.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Corey, it's weird to call you that. I'm so used to Mr. Schneider. Um, but yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I'm gonna make sure my mic is turned up so you can hear me okay. Um, yeah, I want to thank especially Corey for giving me this opportunity. It's, as we all have experienced, this has been some tough times, and especially for musicians, a lot of our lives have been turned upside down, as you are all, I'm sure, aware of what's happening with South Shore right now. But yeah, my life was going really hard up until it was March 11th. I had an 11-hour day, and I was finishing. We were going to do a premiere, actually, a world premiere of an opera, and we were finishing the second week of, or the final week of rehearsals. And I remember it was a Wednesday night, and we were like, well, someone's kind of sick in the cast, and so we don't know if we should show up the next day. And then the next day, everything was canceled. So I think like the first thing, before I get into like the whole journey, is it made me really think of what is important in music, because after the initial kind of shock and scramble, if you will, of what to do and how to, if I'm going to get for unemployment or whatever it is, then you have to start innovating again. And that's going to be one of the themes for tonight, is innovation, because I feel like we're in a time right now where we have to innovate, for the sake of art. Because if we don't, these things will be lost. And at the same time, we can't let go of what was important. We can't just only do online things. So although I'm really happy to do this, this is not the same as playing in front of someone. You don't have the same energy, and I don't want to, forget that. But at the same time, this is really cool that we're able to do this. Really no other time in history could we just all around the world be experiencing something at the same time. So grateful and also ominous. But anyways, so after I graduated high school, and I was in all the choirs with Mr. Schneider. And it was a really great experience. I went to Lawrence and got my Bachelor of Music degree, and did mostly classical solo piano. So I was just practicing all day, if you will. I was really I played a concerto with the orchestra and had soloed in a couple bigger venues, and wanted to kind of keep going. One of the things I wanted to mention is that even though like the universities are kind of like the go-to thing you reference when you say, where have you been trained? I would say that I was influenced more by the music festivals that I went to, or I guess they would be equivalent would be the music festival and the university that had an influence on me. So I went to several music festivals, a couple in United States, Aspen and Brevard, which I was very lucky to be able to participate in. But that gave me a sense globally of what was going on musically. And I think that helped, even though Lawrence is a very reputable school and a really great school. I think going to these festivals also helped me realize there's way more going on. So I ended up going to Texas, and I lived in Austin for 3 years, which gave me a whole new perspective of the world. Texas is a much different place than where I grew up in Wisconsin, but at the same time, there's a lot of similarities. I guess one of the big differences, every high school had a massive football stadium, massive, and it's like a religion. So think of like the Packers in Wisconsin is what high school football is in Texas. But another thing that was very interesting about Texas, which really threw me off, was that every small community had an opera company, and that like really kind of blew my mind because I thought, this is Texas, guns and cowboys and stuff, and they actually have a yearning for opera, which threw me, kind of blew me away. So when I was in Texas, that was the first time I was still doing my solo studies in my master's, but I really got into more opera when I was in Texas, and it kind of culminated in me going to Italy. So I went to Palermo, which is in Sicily, and that really kind of changed my life. And so I kind of picked up everything. I sold my car and moved to New York to pursue opera. So the thing that did it for me in Italy was that I had studied music my whole life, had practiced all day, played all the solo things I could think of. And I go to Italy and I find this whole entire genre of music that I had not even scratched the surface of. And it just made me realize how much more there is to learn. And so I actually was, I was enrolled in my doctorate, and I ended up walking away from that and moving to New York to try to make it as a pianist. Because I thought I have to learn how to be a pianist, not so much as an academic, but make it actually work. So I look back at it now. I'm like, man, that was kind of stupid. But thank God the past is already in the past, because I'm glad I made that decision. So that was 7 years ago. So I decided in October 2013. So almost exactly. It is exactly 7 years ago. I moved to New York, and so since then I kind of and this was kind of where the growth really started, was that I had to start from square one, because in Wisconsin, as Corey was saying, I made myself kind of a name for myself as a pianist. There's a few of us, and the few people that could play pretty well, that was, you were kind of at the top of the food chain. Well, you walk into New York and you're just, who are you? So that was really a trial by fire, if you will. So after the initial kind of 6 months of hell, I ended up starting to get my bearings, and got an apartment, and got a teaching job, and got myself working in opera. And that was kind of the beginning of the training into opera and vocal music. So what's interesting now is that, so I spent 5 years doing that, and I started developing other skills. I became a repetitor, which is like the fancy word for the pianist that plays for the singer. I started to work as a vocal coach, for a couple places, and right now I'm a vocal coach at University or Manhattan School of Music, and and the the type of duties that you have are almost completely different than being a pianist playing for something like solo and ensemble. So you have to dive into style. You have to dive into uh, what the the traditions of certain um, composers and how those are different than other ones. And the language is huge. And so it was really an informative few years. So then COVID hit, and all of a sudden now the my life has switched back to solo. So I guess the whole point of this story is that being an artist or a musician to me has made me realize that it's just a never-ending journey towards something, and you just got to keep going. um, and the way that I've kept going is innovating. So now I have to do everything online, which is great, but it also poses its own set of challenges. Um, Now, instead of me being super trained into being a great collaborator, now I have to be super trained in how to make the best recording that works for every situation. Um, so it's kind of interesting to see that because I also had my first kind of go at popular music, and it's kind of a similar situation with popular music, where in pop music you have like a click track, and everyone's using the same program, and it's much more I guess cut and dry. Whereas in classical music, we have all kinds of rubato and changes of style. And one maestro 100 years ago thought this was the only way for Beethoven. And now we have this revival of old tuning. So should the Beethoven's Ninth Symphony be in 432? That's like a question we're like asking right now. And because that was closer to what the original tuning would be. So. I just feel like we're kind of asking the same questions we've always asked, but now in kind of a different way. So I'm looking forward to going back to normal. But what I ended up doing from COVID is rediscovering solo piano, and so that's what we're going to kind of focus on today. Even though I love opera and I love vocal music in general, and I'm still doing a lot of it. In fact, I just worked at MSM today, and we had a couple coachings. We just did some excerpts of Barber Seville, which I don't know if any of you know but there's an aria by a soprano. It's called Una voce poco fa. It's really beautiful, but anyways, it was actually crazy to do that again because it's such a different, that kind of piece. It's a bel canto style piece. You can't do it on a recording. So there are. I guess it's also interesting to see how the different styles work for recordings and other ones don't. But anyways, so getting back to my solo rep, so I decided to learn a new program, and one of the tying features of all the pieces that I'm working on is innovation. And the innovation is specifically on pieces that were already established, but that these composers kind of reimagined and ended up kind of making a new prototype, if you will. So to start with the the mother of all composers, right, or father, I guess, would be Bach. And so I have a few notes, so I'm just going to kind of refer to them here real quick. But so I was listening to some podcasts from the BBC, which is they have a really great Music Matters thing. They have tons of free content if you're ever interested in it. But one of the announcers described a wonderful Latin quotation titled "Ars e celare artem," which roughly translates to "art. It is art to conceal in art," or "art is concealed by the means by which it's achieved." So the composers that I'll be sharing with you today, a couple excerpts, and then I'll be doing Beethoven as well. Bach, Beethoven, and Schumann incorporated this mantra into these respective works. So at a first glance, it would seem that all these large-scale pieces that these three composers are kind of just random things, but they all took older forms and kind of made something new out of them. And this is something that you can think about yourselves, because I heard from Corey that you're all working on Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and that's definitely something that Beethoven innovated. He innovated the symphony to the point where we all think of the symphony. If we think of a symphony, it's Beethoven. But the Ninth Symphony at the time, no one had done anything like that before. I mean, it was actually crazy. And to top it off, he was deaf. So it's just kind of amazing to think about what he accomplished. But we'll get to Beethoven in a second. So to start with Bach, Bach was hardly the first person to write a suite. So the partita is roughly defined as a set of pieces or a suite of pieces in the popular dance forms of the time. Bach had already completed a set of 6 English suites, 6 French suites, and the cello and violin. Well, the cello suites and then the violin partita. But I think the partitas was I think he wanted to kind of put his stamp on the world. So he started writing the partitas in 1726, and he kind of was churning them out about one a year. So if you can imagine how prolific Bach was, writing, an entire cantata every week, finishing one partita a year that's a lot of he put a lot of work into these things, and I think he wanted these to be really his namesake in the secular world, because he had kind of already made his mark in the religious world with all the cantatas and passions and that sort of thing. So the partitas were going to be his actual first published work. So at that time, Telemann and Purcell and Vivaldi, Corelli, Rousseau, all of these Baroque composers ended up, or Handel as well, ended up publishing their own works, and they would publish these like massive books of the Klavierbücher, they would call them, Oboe. It would be the Klavierübung, excuse me, and which is German for the clavier works, and essentially they kind of show their compositional prowess. Well, if you would compare Bach's partitas to any one of these other composers, it's ridiculous to see the level of intricacy that's in Bach's writing. And actually, at the time, Bach was criticized for being too particular. So at the time, many of his contemporaries thought that he wrote way too many ornaments, that he didn't leave enough for the performer to do. Now, what's interesting is today, we look at Bach and we say, oh, he didn't write anything. We have so many options. So it's kind of interesting to think about how that view of him has changed over the course of history. He was considered to be someone that wrote way too much in the score. And now we look at it as someone that didn't write anything. So it's kind of interesting. So in the partitas in particular, he wrote out all of his ornaments, whereas in like Handel or these other ones, they would actually just you'd just be expected to know how to do it. One of the ways that Bach innovated is that he uses all of these really hardcore compositional techniques like the fugue or the canon, which is very intellectualized, and transforms them into like a fun dance. And so I'm going to give you 2 examples today for the Bach. It'll be the overture, which is the first movement, and this is kind of like the biggest movement of the 4th partita, and the Gigue, which is it comes from the Celtic jig, and it's the last movement. Now, both of these movements use fugal writing, which I'm sure you've all experienced in the choral singing, where you have a theme, and then you have kind of counter theme, but the theme will always come back in its original form, but maybe in a different juxtaposition or whatever. So listen for how he kind of combines, the quote unquote head and the heart of using these kind of popular dance and kind of fun, and then also has the rigor of like these very kind of stoic compositional styles. So this is Bach's Partita number 4, the overture and the jig.
You know, Jesse, I just loved how did everybody catch about 3/4 of the way through? He had to look at us to see if we were all paying attention to him. He's like, "Are you looking? Are you watching me?" Wow, that was awesome. That was awesome.
Thank you. Okay, so here's the Gigue real quick. So the same thing, and I saw someone write in the Brahms Requiem Fugue, and that's exactly it. It's the same thing. So one thing to listen for in the Gigue is that he uses the theme. So hear that over and over in different forms. And then in the second part, so it's an A-B section. So the first part is the fugue part, and the second part is a inverted kind of variant of it. But what's interesting is after he introduces that, he overlays the fugal subject on top of it. So I'll play it slowly so you can hear it. So you hear how the fugue subject comes in the left hand? Now, this is part of that whole innovation thing, is that in the end, it's so fast, I don't even know if anyone would catch that. But so it's one of those things where it's so well crafted, and yet on the outside, you don't even have to understand the genius behind it, because it's just fun. So I that's what I love about this this piece. So the whole suite is about 30 minutes long. I'm not gonna put you guys through the entire thing, but this is the last movement. It's a fun Gigue, and then we'll move on to the next chronological composer. So here's the Gigue, and I think Corey, I think we have one person that's off mute. Awesome. Okay, so if we're ready, I'm gonna just we'll get the Gigue going here. It's kind of weird seeing everyone clapping and no sound. Thank you so much. Okay, so the next guy in the program is Beethoven. So if I'm sure everyone is aware, this is his 250th birthday this year. So December 16th supposedly is when he was born. I guess there's some debate on whether that's the exact day, but it's December 16th, 2020 will be his 250th birthday. So real quick about Beethoven. This was he was working on the Missa Solemnis at the same time. So the I'm. Did you do that, Corey? No.
We did
Okay.
not. No. Um,
It's amazing. So
yeah, we just did. I think the only thing we've done by him is Beethoven Mass in C. Well, the time you came back, Beethoven Mass in C, and then we did the fantasy.
okay, yeah. So the Missa Solemnis is like the next level of the
Yep.
mass. Highly recommended. You kind of need maybe like a glass of wine and an entire night. But it took him like 3 years. But so he was in the middle of composing that in 1820, and one of his patrons, um, who had uh, who had been like a major proponent of him making his hammer clavier sonata. So, sorry, I forget. You're not a bunch of pianists, or nerds like me. Um, the hammer clavier, which is his, what was it, the 29th sonata that he wrote, is so he was commissioned to write a symphony, and it took him 2 years, and he wrote a piano sonata. Again, just like Bach, Beethoven was very prolific. So spending 2 years on a work is kind of incredible. So the sheer scope of the hammer clavier is almost comparable to what the Ninth Symphony is in terms of symphonies. I mean, the Ninth Symphony just dwarfs all of his other symphonies. I mean, I guess you could make a. I mean, the Eroica is big, the Third Symphony, but just the scope of the Ninth Symphony, there's nothing that even touches it. So the same thing is in the hammer clavier sonata. So that's kind of like the equivalent in the piano world. So this sonata that I'm going to play for you is the one that immediately precedes it, or comes after it. So he was asked by Schiller, I think the name, yeah, no, sorry, uh, Schlesinger, to if he could write three more sonatas. So he wrote his last three sonatas in the genre, his opus 109, 110, and 111, in between 1820 and 1822. Just to keep in mind, he was born in 1770 and died in 1827, so this is at the end of his life. Um, he the reason why, I mean, he was pretty successful at that point in his life, so he didn't really need the money. But one of the I think driving factors for him to getting more money was that he was in a very interesting custody battle over his brother's son, or his nephew, whom he was entrusted in his will, but him and the wife of his brother's son, Carl, they did not like each other. So Beethoven wanted to have complete custody of the son, and wanted to be, I think, more of a father figure, um, since he didn't have any children of his own. And Carl had just died of tuberculosis. So it was kind of a sad situation. So I think even though Beethoven was writing music for just music's sake, I think there's also other reasons why. But what's interesting is that these final three sonatas are kind of like a final farewell. So you can see that as like a compositional output, Beethoven's final kind of go in this instrument. After the Opus 11, he didn't write any more piano sonatas. So in a similar way, these final three sonatas are kind of like the Ninth Symphony, in that he finished that genre with a bang. And each of these sonatas kind of go the other extreme than the hammer clavier, which I was just talking about. The hammer clavier is technically super difficult. It's 55 minutes long, and just massive scale of highs and lows. Well, the first movement of the Beethoven sonata that I'll be sharing with you is probably about 2.5 minutes long. So that gives you the also the perspective of that. He went big and then he went small. But what's interesting is that he doesn't miss anything. Like there's nothing missing in this piece, even though it's so much more compact. So he also kind of innovated in a different way too. So taking the Hammerklavier and making the sonata form, which I don't know if you know, but is the same form as the symphony. He kind of compacted it into two parts. A kind of a first part where he has like kind of contrasting emotions, and then the second part, which is some kind of homage to Bach. So the last three sonatas, the last movements are following: variations, fugue, variations. And this particular piece, the variations movement, resembles the Goldberg variations, which, as we were learning from the Bach that I just played, the partitas, the Goldberg variations are kind of his crowning jewel of piano works. Like nothing ever comes close to the Goldberg variations. And one of the interesting thing about the Goldberg variations, this is Bach we're talking about, is that he starts with a theme and he comes back to the theme at the end. And so Beethoven does the same thing. In the final movement of this sonata, he starts with a very singing. I mean, he actually says Gesangvoll, which is singing, in the score. Here's the example. So it's a very beautiful melody. So what's interesting is that he takes this melody, and instead of doing the traditional variations, so I guess it's got two levels here. That he's taking something from Bach's time and inputting it into a contemporary form, which is the sonata form. But then he's when he actually does the variations, normally what you would do in variations is you take a theme, and then you, as the variations progress, you get more and more intricate. And then finally at the end you have maybe a relative major or minor, and then some kind of intermission, and then you have kind of a big finale. Well, he kind of gets away from that, and it's more of like a psychological variation. So instead of making the variations more ornamented, what I would describe is he reveals what's inside of this theme. So as we go through these variations, maybe keep in mind that what he's doing with the theme was not normal at the time. Even though we think of it as now like, oh yeah, it's Beethoven variations, of course. But at the time, he went psychological and went kind of into the deeper meaning of what this theme is and what it can reveal. And you end up coming back to the simplicity at the end instead of getting more complicated. So I will play the first and last movements of the Beethoven. So you can sit back. The variations movement is about 10 minutes long. So, sit back and relax. And the first movement, like I said, is very short. Another interesting thing that Beethoven did in this first movement, and then I'll stop talking, is that in a sonata, you normally have two main themes. You have the first theme, which is in whatever key it is. So for this sonata, it's this. It's a very nice, it's almost like a chorale. And I don't know, I just noticed this too. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Magic Flute, but there's a scene in the Magic Flute where the three witches are singing about Tamino, and they go. So it's the exact same chord progression. Beethoven also does this chord progression in another sonata, which brings into the question also of the difference that we view copyright. You know, at that time, they didn't think of ownership of a certain chord progression or ownership of a certain theme. I mean, you were kind of like a lesser composer if you started to, just copy people. But he could use the same chord progression and mean a completely different thing. In the Mozart version that I was just describing, it's kind of funny, but this is definitely not a joke in this one. So then the second theme is usually a contrast, right, to the first theme. So kind of an old school way of looking at it that the old school theorists used to say would be is you have a masculine and a feminine. You have a strong first theme and then a more sensitive second theme. Well, in this way, he reverses it. He has a very kind of beautiful first theme, and then he changes the time signature, which I've never seen anyone in the classical period do, and thrusts you into even a different tempo. So the first tempo that we started is vivace ma non troppo, and then in the second theme, we're in a totally another world. So another crazy thing that he does is it's like you can Beethoven has such like a mastery of the form that he could spend 10 minutes doing that, or literally 1 second, getting into a whole new world. And I think that's one of the geniuses of the reasons why Beethoven's still around is that he was able to achieve this these dichotomies and these changes in music through many different means, either through development or just like that. So here's the first movement. It goes by quickly, so be ready.
Wonderful. Awesome.
Thank you. So I think this will be the final this will be the final piece. This will be the variations, the last movement. Um, so just a quick recap of what to listen for. There are 6 variations, and each one has a distinct style. And I really listen for. There's 2 of them in particular that I want you to listen for. It's the one that sounds like a Bach toccata, number one, and the second one is the one that sounds like a choral fugue. So there's one that's like almost like written in the style of a choral fugue. Um, so as it kind of transforms, listen for when these styles kind of pop out of it. So this is and he writes Gesangvoll mit innigster Empfindung, which is singing with the deepest feeling. So he was this is something I think almost borderline religious in its content. Um, Definitely philosophical. So thank you everyone for being here. We didn't get to Schumann, but you know what? I will be recording this in the future, and so maybe if you're interested, you can let me know, and I will forward you the link. So um, thank you very much, and here we go.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Bravo, bravo. Nice job, Jesse. Absolutely wonderful. So you can take a breath now, Jesse, I would suppose, huh? Should we open it up to some questions? Now, the way you can do this is you can either type it quickly in your, first of all, I need to tell you a story. So how many of you want to go practice right now? I was like, crap, I should really like learn how to play that C major scale because Warren never taught it to me the right way when I had him as my teacher. Still can't play that damn thing. Anyways, I still remember just a short little story with Jesse. So I think it was your junior year, might have been your senior year when we bought the Steinway for the new PAC.
Oh yeah.
And I was fortunate enough with Polly Miller to go to New York and get it. And when we took the tour of the Steinway company, they said, make sure you play that Steinway, that 9-foot Steinway that we have as much as possible. And Jesse was like a little kid in a candy store the day before I left because I told him about this. He goes, oh my God, can I go with you? And then we got back and he had to hear all about it. And then when we told him, Jesse, you can practice on this piano as much as you want. We have to break it in. So here's this junior, senior in high school having this 9-foot brand new Steinway piano to practice on as much as he wanted to. The little kid was in seventh heaven. Do you remember that, Jesse?
Yeah. Now I have this obsession to buy a Steinway. So eventually that's my dream. But yes, it's pretty cool and it's a beautiful instrument. It's still there.
It is still there and it's still doing very well. So let's open it up to Warren. No, I have not found middle C yet, by the way, just to answer your question. Yeah, exactly. So let's open it up to some questions. Raise your hand if you have a question. Type it in the chat. Okay, so Jesse, if you had your druthers, what part of this whole performing thing would you want to be doing? And please tell him Megan Gilliland says hi.
Tell Megan I say hi too and hope she's doing well. Uh, so what do you? I guess maybe to clarify, do you mean that would in today's climate, or do you mean in?
He's nodding his head yes, in today's climate.
Okay, I mean, as you could tell, there are issues with the whole online performance thing. It's great that we can be able to do this, but I think in today's day and age, here I'll show you actually some of my new toys. So this is my setup. So I have like Omni mics set up inside, and then I have some cardioid. So I had no idea what those things were before the pandemic. So I think one of the things that this is kind of making me realize is that I can make my own recordings, and I think that is something if it's up to me, I would love to make and be able to be that pianist that you call and I could send you a CD within a couple days. You know? So my goal is to get good enough with the producing side of it and get a good enough instrument that I could essentially be able to work from home more. And then when things open up again, I can still do all the performing, but what's nice is that I can still do all the stuff I'd be doing anyways. So I think that if I had it my way, I would invest a little bit more in a good, a little bit better. I need a better preamp, then a little better video quality stuff, and get more into that and get really good at producing. So that because that's something that's not going away.
Right.
Yeah.
Which,
so,
Jesse, I think that leads us perfectly into Warren's question about when you teach lessons, do you teach via Zoom? How do you deal with any of the delay between the two parties or the two computers?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, first of all, for all you teachers out there, thank you for what you do because right now it sucks. It really does. So thank you for everyone that is doing this. So I'm one of those people that are doing that, and it's I found that it's okay, it's multi-layered. The It depends on the age of the student and what we're working on. I found that students a little older, I can give them more kind of tasks to do, and I can just kind of react. So that makes the delay and any sound issues not so difficult. Now, if I'm working with kind of more kids, um, I usually use FaceTime. I found FaceTime has less of a delay than Zoom, but at the this Zoom actually they must have fixed something because this stuff is going much better. So the other thing I do is connect an Ethernet cable into my computer, and I have like super fast internet. But sometimes you just got to deal with it. I like, for instance, I'm doing coachings, and some of the students that I coach are in China, so I have to, I meet with them at 7 in the morning because it's 12-hour difference. So like, somehow that's the best time for them, and I have to send them a recording because just the because in China, you need like a special VPN and like internet access to access a lot of these things that we use. So he's going through a special VPN and stuff. So there's going to be latency. So I can't. That's difficult because I can't play with him while he's singing, right? There's just no way. So you have to kind of be you kind of have to adapt. And I'm sure all the other teachers out there understand this. Is that it's more that I give them more tasks to do, and then I'll send recordings, and then they sing along to the recording, and then I can help them. Um, with like piano students, I found that FaceTime and Google Hangouts, even though the video quality isn't as high, the audio quality doesn't have any distortion. So as long as I think also in New York we have really good internet. So it might be different. I might, you guys might have different issues than me because our crappy internet is probably because it's such a big city is better than your standard internet. Um, so I'm getting 200 megabytes per second or something when I do the tests. So that helps a lot with the latency. But I think there are certain things you just can't, you just have to kind of adjust. So there's not really any collaboration, which is kind of sad. But I'm still learning too.
So somewhere in your bio or information that I took off your website, it states in there that you play a little organ once in a while too. Where did that start? Because I never knew that you did the organ side of it. And how do you still do a lot of that, or is that just a little bit? Or
Yeah,
explain the
so
organ
yeah,
side.
so I was actually going to be an organ major at Lawrence, but fun little anecdote of my life. The organ professor and the piano professor got in a fight over how much time I needed to practice. So the piano teacher ended up winning, and uh, yeah, but organ, I still play organ. So right now, I played in an Episcopal church here in Manhattan. It's a smaller congregation, but and right now they're getting the organ restored. It's in Austin, Oregon. I forget how many stops, but it's a nice organ, and it's getting restored by the people that work on the Yale organ, like the people. So it's in good hands. So thankfully, we have this whole renovation project. It's happening during this pandemic, and the checks were already signed afterwards. So I'm gonna get a whole new organ, and I don't have to. We were originally gonna be in a trailer doing the services, but I normally play all the services. In an Episcopal service, there's a lot of music to play, but now I do all recordings. So I've made I don't know how many weeks, 25 weeks, 30 weeks of recordings for church. But yeah, I love organ. It's such a different world. It's especially some of the music, especially with choir, is so good. So yeah, I love doing organ as well, and it's just another aspect of things. So yeah.
So living in New York, a lot of people assume that when you walk down the street, you see a lot of TV and movie stars and professional musicians. who is there anybody you've collaborated with musically famous that we may know, besides just like local New York people? Because you've worked with a lot of professional musicians. Now, a lot of it's probably on the opera side, which we may not know all of them, but just kind of curious who have you maybe brushed elbows with a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I've brushed elbows with a lot of like old opera stars, but I don't know how much
Right.
you all will know that. But some big American names would be like Mignon Dunn and Cheryl Milnes and Anton Coppola. He just died. He was 100 years old, but he was one of the kind of the first wave of Italian immigrants to come over from Italy and bring kind of the he knew Puccini, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So he actually wrote an ending to Turandot, which is Puccini's last opera. But I don't know if let's see. I mean, I've worked with some semi-famous people, but I haven't gotten all the way. I mean, I've worked with people that like were in Hamilton, and I've worked with people that were in like major productions. Um, but it's mostly kind of it's a niche. I guess like uh, if you know who Aaron Jones is, you know a lot about football, right? So it's kind of like that. I could say a bunch of names, but I feel like I'd just be name dropping. It's more about like I think the working with institutions and also the venues. So I've been very lucky to perform in Carnegie Hall 4 times. I got to perform in Symphony Space. Um, I got to meet some amazing living composers. I don't know if any of you know Ben Moore or Ricky Ian Gordon, but both are, and Tom Cipulo, they're all New York-based composers that are living here that I've got to work with and like walk into their houses. And that's been cool, even though they may not be household names. I'm really happy to have worked with composers that are creating stuff now. Um, and yeah, you see famous people once in a while, and it's always kind of weird because it's like this is both of our homes. Like it's different if you were like a tourist and then you see like a famous person, but like when I see them, it's weird. You don't go like, hey, how's it going? Like I remember I saw. Do you remember Jon Stewart?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was just sitting in the Central Park and I saw him and I didn't want to like be like, hey, I remember you and I was watching you when I was in college and that because I feel like he's doing the same thing I'm doing, trying to get away from people. So yeah, you kind of rub elbows with these people, but I'd say not that's still a chapter in my life. I'll update you when I have the super famous people.
There you go. I love it.
Cool.
Well, we're getting down to our last few minutes here. Any last minute questions or another question or two that you'd like to ask Jeff?
Sorry.
Is anybody waving their hands? John, be careful.
Oh, okay. Grandpa or Alfred. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, say something.
We're so proud of you. We don't know where the talent came from. Hey,
And we're sitting here looking out and we can see the snow coming down and enjoy the weather and glad you were with us.
yeah, so happy for all these people, wonderful people.
So you're saying the snow is coming down, Alfred. Where are you guys at?
Oh, we're in the UP.
Okay.
Actually, we're in the part of the UP that they call the Banana Belt. We're close to the Wisconsin border, but we're going to get about 3 or 4 inches tonight.
Well, you can keep it up by you. We don't want it down here yet.
All right, I don't want to make you all jealous, but it was 70 degrees here today.
Oh.
So there are some perks.
Any other questions for Jesse? Well, I guess I would just like to wrap up by saying thank you to all of you for being a part of this, and especially Jesse. to you. It is so amazing um, and just everybody in Fond du Lac is so proud of what you have gone on to do, and just embrace the arts world and music world and continuing to spread joy and love. And when you give a presentation like this to all of us, you can just hear the passion in your voice when you're talking about this song or that song or whatever it is. And just, it's so energizing to us as other musicians and former directors and teachers or whatever the case may be. So thank you for sharing your passion with us tonight. I think Sherry said it to me. It was just really wonderful, and just a great breath of fresh air to just sit and listen and hear you talk about this tonight. So Jesse, thank you from all of us. Let's all give him a nice actual round of applause, huh? Yeah.
Thank you everyone for being here. It's really, I don't know how much you may not know how much it means to me to have an audience again, because this is the first performance I've had. And I had tons of things. I don't want to get depressed, but I had a lot of things lined up, and they were all canceled. And so it's kind of like what Corey was mentioning, is that part of it was like I had to find my passion again, because I wasn't just busy anymore. You know, and it's hard because I'm not it's different when you're 18 and you're like, I wonder what life's gonna be like. But being in your mid 30s, you're like, I gotta find my passion, but also I gotta be realistic about this. So keeping it, keeping my head on straight and still having that kind of childish wonder, is you have to kind of be in both worlds. So I really love the fact that you all are just as passionate about music as I am, and I want to just leave you all with a book that I've been reading. It's by Edwin Gordon, who did this music theory learning sequence music theory thing, where it's essentially a learning theory. And one of the things he discusses is that in music we have, he kind of proposes we have 5 vocabularies. And our 5 vocabularies are reading, writing, audiation, performing, and listening. And one thing that we can do as either professionals or amateurs is to make sure that all 5 of those things are being activated. So the listening is easy enough because we have all the the YouTube and everything. Writing is kind of hard because people just don't write music all the time. And same as reading, but it's good to keep those kind of intact. But I think the main thing is that audiation one. And so the audiation is what he terms is thinking in music. So what's one thing to do is, especially the music that you're studying, is try to think of music. And the way that you can think of audiation is the same as, has any, I'm sure anyone has gotten a theme stuck in your head, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to sing it and you have the theme in your head, right? Well, try to do that with other pieces. Try to get stuff stuck in your head and understand it in a way that you're thinking about it in musical terms. I was just thinking about this. It would be so great in like an ideal world for the first lesson of a student for you to go up and be like, okay, and see what they play back, right? Because instead of it being, oh, that's C, E, oh, it's a major third. Okay, good. All right, let's practice a major third now. Instead of that, what does that mean? Now we have something totally different. And so the audiation is the way, I guess what he's saying is that it's our job to create the syntax of music, because there is no global grammar. If you're in one style, there's certain rules, and another style is other rules. So I think we can all work on that, is when we're listening, don't just listen to it passively, but think about what is it that's happening in it, and how is the music interacting with each other, and maybe start to think of music more like a language. And that will help. I had a conversation with a student today, and he said, how do I find my passion again? Because he was working on a piece and he just kind of lost the passion. And I said, well, part of it is that you don't have to think about why you're passionate. You have to find what's in the music that you're passionate about. So what are you passionate about? Do you want, and that's something that you can start to do with music that's apart from our everyday life, that'll give us meaning. And music can mean so many different things, and that's the cool part of this. So even Beethoven, who is so apart from our culture, has meaning in our lives. And I think the interesting question is why. Why did that music mean something to you, and why, how? And I think that's a cool a cool concept to kind of meditate on. So, all right.
Awesome. Well, we will keep this live for a few more minutes. If anybody wants to stay on and chat with Jesse just one-on-one, if you knew him as a student or just friend or whatever. But thank you all for joining us, and we hope you all have a safe and wonderful week. Thank you again, Jesse, and we'll stay live for a few more minutes, and we'll see you back here next week with next week's session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch.
Warren, I promise I'll go practice my
Thanks,
C major scale when I'm done. Contrary motion, 3 octaves.
I just, I just hope all the arts organizations survive this whole thing, because I know I belong to the Greeley Chorale here. I think of the wonderful things in all the cities, the big cities and stuff. What terrible, is the Met going to come back? I mean, what about Broadway? What about the Milwaukee Symphony,
Yeah, the New York Phil and the Met are not, the entire season is over. And the sad thing, and I don't want to get into, too much, stuff, but the sad thing is that, they're not doing outreach. They're not like going out and trying to like employ these people. They're just shutting the doors. And I get it, they're not going to make money, but I feel like something like the Met, which is such a big organization, has to be the leader in that. I'm disappointed, sadly, but you're exactly
Well, I
right.
agree with that.
Actually, I had a conversation. Oh, sorry, I'll let 1 second. I had a conversation with someone that runs one of these festivals, and like a year-long festival, and we were talking, and she essentially said, I can't hire you this year, and I'm like, that's cool, I understand. But what's important is that next year you're here. Like I understand that I got to take a hit this year if you're going to be here next year, because that's the most important thing. Is they can survive to get back, so then when things start get going again, they're still here. Because that's going to be the real issue, is when things come back and who's left.
Right.
I agree with you. Our Greeley Symphony, we have a really nice symphony here. And they've been having free concerts downtown and different places outside. And they had their brass quartet this last week, just small ensembles. But I think that outreach, like you said, is so important to keep that going.
Yeah, it's it's not only for the community, which I think the community needs it. People love this stuff, but also for the artists, because we're like, what do we all feel like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off right now. Yeah, I agree. So one of the things that that's why this is so cool that you're doing this, Corey, because like I think